Death Stranding has been out for about 2 months or so now, and I am still working on beating it, but I wanted to give a little bit of a love letter to this game, and also to tell everybody who's still maybe on the fence about it that the game you play initially is not the game you end up playing. And I'm sure that's going to probably change as well in the future, but I can give you guys an update of where I am at. Maybe it will change your expectations slightly, and maybe it will make you reconsider this game if you haven't already. It definitely was on my top 5 games of 2019 list, although I did not claim it to be the game of the year. I felt that it was definitely deserving of that spot, and there were a lot of really good games that came out, and I hadn't played as much Death Stranding as I have now, and I'm not going to change my pick, but I think that based on everything I have played lately, really makes me consider, should it have ultimately been my true game of the year. It's really, really good. When you start playing the game, it's going to be very slow. It's going to be very monotonous, and I think that's intentionally done to kind of punish you. You know, a lot of times in the world, we hear the term earning your dues. It's something that, at least when I was growing up in industry, was something that I was made very aware of by my management very early on, that I was going to have to take on the crummy jobs and the boring assignments because I was new and young and dumb. Society has shifted slightly now. We are definitely a much more on-demand society now, and while this video is not going to get into the implications of different types of genres of, you know, beliefs and age groups and everything, I think it's worth pointing out that most people now are they want results very quickly. They're very impact driven. They want, like, you know, I bought something on Amazon, I need it the next day. And I love that environment and I love that society, but that's not where I came from. I came from a little different place. And maybe that's why Death Stranding speaks to me a little bit more. And the reason I'm talking a little bit about that, and not so much about the game initially here, is because I feel like the game forces you to slog through for the first couple hours, and it's really not as fun as it could be. I mean, I still enjoyed it. I think the world is beautiful, the mechanics, the storytelling, the graphics, everything. I think it's all there, but moment to moment, I can definitely say it's not the most exciting experience I've ever had. And I suspect a lot of people played that initial area and said, you know what, this game is not for me, and they moved on. But I implore all of you to continue to Chapter 3. Now, Chapter 3 is where it really starts to open up. That's when you're exposed to the biggest section of the map, the Central America portion of the map. And you're going to be spending most of your time in this area. Now, what makes this area so much more fun than the previous area is it's a lot more logistical issues. I talked a lot about Satisfactory and how I never thought of a factory building game could be fun, of managing supply lines and power restraints and demands. And while Death Stranding doesn't go to that level of management in terms of, you know, that level of detail, there is still some logistical issues that need to be resolved, and it makes the game about building the world. And I understand now more what Kojima meant when he talked about building this world together. The big thrust of the initial part of the third chapter revolves around you building a highway, which is totally optional. You do not have to build this highway. If you choose to walk everywhere, I mean, I guess you could, but you're going to realize that you can start somewhat making your life a little bit easier. Very early on, you'll steal a mule truck, which is an enemy vehicle that you can use to load up a ridiculous amount of supplies. You could start driving that around. You'll eventually unlock motorcycles and then long-range motorcycles. And while those don't have nearly the supply capacity of, like, the truck, for example, it does allow you to get into the world a lot faster and start moving around more quickly. And what you'll realize is, as you start building up this highway, other people are in their games doing the same thing, and you'll see the roads almost build before your very eyes, at least to a very large part. What you're seeing is things actually being put together, and other people can use them, and you kind of really start to build this world together. My best guess is that Death Stranding is instanced. Clearly, I am late to this game. A lot of people have already beaten this game and moved on. I'm just playing it now for the first time. So there's a lot of the world that is left for me to build. So I feel like they probably instanced me with other players who are around the same level I am, or about the same amount of time played. Because if everybody was able to put everything in the world instantly, it'd be a very boring game, because you would just have everything done. You would just drive to the end of the game and it would be done. But this kind of makes you earn it, and at least in a similar manner with other players, where it feels like you're contributing and you're not being hand-holding, but you're also not carrying people. So it's definitely a difficult balance to kind of determine all of that. However, as you start to, get a large amount of materials, thousands and thousands of metal or of ceramics or of resins to build up this highway. And as you build up the highway, when you start seeing how easily you can start to traverse from different cities across the map, you really start to get a much greater appreciation for putting this world together. And as other NPCs start to populate the world, it definitely feels like a much safer place. And it's that world building that you are doing in your game and in tandem with other players online at the same time that I think really starts to bring the whole experience together. And that's something that is really lacking in the first map. I can understand why, if people played the game just in that first chapter, the first 2 chapters in that opening area alone, probably wouldn't have been that exciting. Because you're only limited in a very small things you can build. You can build online generators, which really don't help you because you don't have a motorcycle until way late in the chapter. And once it gets destroyed, you cannot build a new one. Some storage containers and some small ancillary things that don't really help you a whole lot, because you're basically just trudging through with, mountains of gear on your back and your arms navigating through this map. It's not as rewarding, and I feel like if there's any criticism I can really give to Death Stranding, and as much as I love the earning your dues, I think that the review scores probably would have been a bit higher, and this game probably would have received much more universal acclaim if they introduced some of those world-building elements earlier. But as I've continued to play this game, and I sunk another, I'd say 8 or 9 hours yesterday alone, just slowly building up this network and having a lot of fun doing it. Meeting new survivor camps and outposts and bringing them into the fold, starting to automate some of my deliveries, being able to build up the environment around me in a meaningful way, not just for me, but for other people who reciprocate by giving you likes, and you can kind of make them your favorites. And it's a strand system where essentially you are networking with other people and you're more inclined to see their creations and their world building to kind of supplement your own. It's a very original system, and it's one that hasn't really been done before. Maybe outside of Dark Souls, I can think of a game where you really had a kind of nameless, faceless helper. You could always summon people and they would help you fight a boss, but you didn't really know who they were. You got to see their handle, but that you weren't able to communicate with them. I think Death Stranding takes that to a more practical level in terms of structures and infrastructure and delivery mechanisms. You start finding vehicles strewn about that people have left behind for you, or caches of materials that might be useful in your adventure. And it's really somewhat rewarding to pay it forward, when you find a big cache of stuff, leaving it there for people, knowing that somewhere out there in the wide world of PlayStation 4's Death Stranding, somebody stumbled across that crate and said, oh, this is great, I'm gonna put it in my structure and build up my environment, and it's kind of a self-building, self-healing network almost, if you want to think of it that way. So I do appreciate it. I'm sure there's a lot more political themes buried within Death Stranding as I'm slowly circumventing getting through the plot, because it's a lot of small cutscenes that kind of slowly piece together what's going on. And I will definitely do a final spoiler video on the story element of it. But I just wanted to give an update here because I haven't been talking about it, and I have been playing it pretty excessively. I feel like I'm always defending this game to people, and I'm trying not to do that in this video. If you don't like it and it sucks, okay, it doesn't hurt my feelings. I don't have any stock in this game. But I would say to people who are closed-minded solely because of what they think the game is about, or 5 minutes of playing it here or there, in you know, the early stages in particular, I would stress, you know, give it some time, try it again, think about it, look at some of the more later on gameplay, and understand that this game is trying to force you to build a foundation and then to build across that foundation for yourself and for other players. And I think that maybe brings people back into the fold. I'm not entirely sure. So there you have it. Just wanted to give some updates on Death Stranding, and hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a comment below. Let me know if your opinion of the game changed as you played it, or were you one of the many people who tried it and quit. I know that based on trophy count and percentages of people earning stuff, it's very clear to me that a lot of people did not finish this game, and I'm wondering at what point you decided to drop off. But if you make it to Chapter 3, I think you may be pleasantly surprised, and I think you may find that the game is actually very, very entertaining. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.